Hi everyone, it's Kristy from the East Pennsboro Library with session 2 from the East Pennsboro Historical Society with Jim Leonard, and today he's going to tell us about the history a little bit more of the Historical Society, and he's going to tell us about the celebrations and projects that the Historical Society has been involved in since they began. So Jim, I'll give the floor to you.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be back again. I appreciate you taking time to go through all this with me. Since 1999 up through now, the Historical Society has been heavily involved in our community events that have happened over the years. Give you an idea, a quick briefing here. We had the 250th anniversary of Cumberland County was the first event that the Historical Society was involved in before we actually came to this building. We're going to talk about the 100th anniversary of Enola Yard back in 2005. The building and completion of the Nail Mill Museum, which is at Adam Rickey Park, back in 2008. We're going to talk about the Summerdale 100th anniversary. That was in 2009. We're going to talk about the Enola Miller House plaque that was put up at the Enola Miller House in 2019, whenever the Cumberland County Historical Society established it a historic place in Cumberland County. We're going to take a sideshow to the 1959 football team, which was unbeaten, untied, and unscored upon, and that was quite an event back in the day. And at that time, I was very fortunate to have been in the high school band for the entire year, so I got to see every game and participate in the field at half times and all the parades and events that happened that year after each game. So we're going to start out by just showing a photo here of the single event that the Historical Society, with Herb Kruger in charge, of course, of this event. The 250th or 200th anniversary of Cumberland County was celebrated back in 1999, and Herb Kruger, with the Historical Society along with the Alumni Association, built this plaque depicting the Enola Yard, crossroads of course, and then the water tank down in the yard. So they participated in this event in the big celebration parade in 1999. I'm going to open the book here that they had at Cumberland County after all of the events of that year, and it was the Grand Feature Parade in 2000, celebrating the 1999 event. And during that time, the East Pennsboro High School Band was in the parade, along with the float that helped Enola be part of that event. And these were the township representatives who were involved with the committees that were building the parade events and also some of the other events that happened that year in 2000, I should say between 1999 and 2000. As you can see here, they had a huge parade with all these different divisions. Of course, the Enola team was involved in helping to get all this together. As you can see, there's 4 pages here of different businesses and high schools and towns in Cumberland County that were participating in this event. So it was quite an event, and we're proud to have had our alumni from the Historical Society, along with the Alumni Association of Enola, East Pennsboro Township here. So at the end of that, Herb Kruger was involved with us actually establishing the Historical Society. 1999 is when we got our charter. They had a board of commissioners involved in helping to establish all the bylaws and so forth of the Historical Society. So in 1999, they got the thing going. In 2003, we got the building. We're here now, of course, after all these years, and we were involved in many celebrations and events throughout that time. The next big event that happened back in the day, 2005, was the 100th anniversary of Enola, the town, Enola Yard, the train yard. And that year, we had many celebrations too. We had a centennial ball. We had a walking tour. We still can do that walking tour down through Enola to show you all the little mom and pop organizations, mom and pop, I should say, stores and barbershops and jewelry stores and so forth. That walking tour can show you all those places where they were at down through town. They had a cemetery tour. Mr. Jim Schmick, who was in charge of that, did a wonderful presentation of the famous people of our town that are in the Enola Cemetery. They're infamous now, of course. We had a train ride that year, and I was fortunate to be on the committee that had that train ride. We had an old train. I shouldn't say an old, a semi-old train came into Enola Yard for 2 trips from the Harrisburg station all the way across the Rockville Bridge into Enola Yard and then back over to the station. And we did 2 trips that year. And fortunately, I was a conductor on one of the cars that time. And we had cars full of people that had a wonderful time sharing that experience to go across the Rockville Bridge and actually come into the yard. And that's the only real passenger thing that came into the yard as long as I can remember. And it was an event that I'll be very proud to have been a part of back at that time. The reason I was a conductor on that train is because I had an opportunity to explain the yard and how it ran and so forth, and they got a chance to see it as we were going in from overview all the way into the middle of the yard. After that was finished up, we had the Centennial Festival. It was held at Adam Rickey Park. We had some all kinds of different events that year. We had a Centennial Parade, which was a huge parade, and I'm going to forward some photographs of the parade and some of the events that we participated in to Kristy, and she's going to be able to show them to you somehow in her presentation later on. So I'm just going to give you a few brief slides here. I do a 100-year slideshow of Enola Yard and Enola the town, and as I show these slides, I explain how Wesley and Frances Miller, who owned this house from her parents, and how Enola Miller was born in the house, and how our town was named after Enola Miller, who was about 14 years old at this time. And this is her in her later years as a wife to Mr. Snyder. Now this here is something we talked about in the last event here when she did her slideshow, or I shouldn't say slideshow, her movie of the Historical Society. This is the actual notice that named Enola after Enola Miller, and this became established in 1888.
Can
and
I
this
interrupt
was,
you for
sure.
1 second, Jim? Can you pull your screen up?
It's a little bit of a glare.
Yeah, there's a lot of glare on it, and I'm not sure if I'm... Now, I'm not going to be able to get it with our lights.
All right, well, we'll
here,
forward some
so-
photographs of our presentation. Maybe you can just even see this a little bit. This was
There we go.
a postcard of the town of Enola while it was being built. And up here at the top, you can see the old hotel that was established by the Enola Yard for the railroaders to sleep and take rest in while they were building the yard. And this is the town as it's being built by the Manor Realty Company for the railroaders and their families in Enola.
You know what I'm thinking, Jim? It might be... This is on the Historical Society website.
Absolutely.
So what we can do is if anybody wants to go back and look at any of the slides that you show us, I can include a link to that specific archive on the Society's website
Absolutely.
in case they
So-
need to get a clearer view.
So the rest of the photographs here are of the Kerbal construction crews that worked in the yard, and these guys were building the yard from the huge hills and mountains from the Blue Mountain all the way down through Enola. This is the culvert in Summerdale that goes over underneath the yard, and it just shows the workers as they were building this section of the Enola Yard. So the rest of the slideshow is going to be a lot about trains and cars and cabooses and engines and crews and so forth, and we'll see that she gets actual photographs, and she can follow up with what I'm talking about now to show you some really good, clear photographs of all the events that happened in Enola.
Thank you, that would be great.
As you were...
I know our patrons will enjoy that.
So I'll knock this one down, and we'll move on from the Enola Yard being built and so forth, and the celebration at that time, to the Nail Mill Museum. Now, I do have... I thought I had that handy. But the Nail Mill Museum, maybe many of you have seen it out at Adam Rickey Park. It was built in 2008, and it was laid out and built by Tom Crognally and his crew. Tom's from West Fairview, and he was very proud to have been part of this project, since it's depicting and showing an actual building that is to scale of what the actual nail mill was down over the hill from us here. And that nail mill, of course, we're going to talk about that a little bit another time with some photographs and so forth that I'm going to give her to present to you in a more simple manner, so that you can see what's going on and what it was in reality, and what the Nail Mill Museum.
Well, maybe one of our future presentations, Jim, we can meet out at the nail mill, and we can do a little virtual tour in there.
We can do that. We have a nice little tour set up out there that you can go around the inside of the building and see.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
With the nail mill. And we have a nail machine, of course, you can look at, and I can show how that works.
I think that would be a phenomenal idea for some more videos.
So we can jump around here a little bit. I can maybe go to the 1959 football team, since that's sort of an in-between thing that we can talk about.
Sure.
Before we go on to the celebration of the West Fairview 200th and the Summerdale 100th anniversary. This will take a few seconds here to kick up and... Now we have to have a little bit of high school band music here to make this really sound like it should be back in the day. They don't play music like this anymore at the high school half times, but this is a college song that was used in one of the famous colleges. And along with that, you know, we're going to go back to 1959 and look at a picture here of the 1959 football team. They were unbeaten, untied, and unscored upon. And that year, I was very fortunate to have been in the high school band. So that whole year, I got to see every football game and everything that was happening throughout the year. It started out with them winning a few games, you know, 2-3 games, and nobody's beating them, nobody's scoring any touchdowns against them. And, you know, it's just maybe a typical year for a high school football team. But as the year went on and on, you know, things were getting really, really, let's say, stirred up amongst the media, because, hey, these guys are doing something that never happened before. So I'm going to page down through this a little bit, and you can see some of the scores and so forth that East Pennsboro had back in that day. You can see here that halfway through the year, we're talking about, you know, some big scores. These guys are really, you know, beating these guys up pretty bad at times. And as it goes on and on, you know, the media is really getting given the full attention to East Pennsboro High School, because these guys are really doing something that never happened before. Before the team actually got to play that year, this is the last game at Enola High School before John Gross became the coach of the East Pennsboro 1959 football team. And you can see the team carrying John off the football field. It was quite an event. And this is what the high school looked like back in 1959. Nothing like it looks like today. But this is the 1960 class of seniors. I should say, they are the 1960 class, but the 1959 football year is in the fall. It starts in September through June, of course. So these are the kids back in the day that participated. Here's Jim Leonard over here in the corner playing that baritone saxophone in the high school band. The only thing we did when we went out in the field usually was go out and make a design of the E and the P, and we'd play about 3 or 4 high school songs, or college theme songs, and go off the field, and the team would come back out and play football again. Now here's the coaches that were involved in the 1959 football team. John Gross, who became the principal at East Pennsboro High School. There's Bob Schuller. He was the shop teacher and the assistant football coach. And Jim Miller, he was a teacher at the high school too. And of course he was one of the assistants. Now here's the football team who graduated. I'm not going to give you names because we're going to give them to Kristy here. And you can see they had a full team of football players who were graduating that year. So there was really nothing left for the class of 1960 football team. So action shots, these are in the yearbook. We took these out of the yearbook. Nothing unusual. Here's some pictures of stuff that was in the newspaper as the year went on. Butch Kramer, he's still around. Butch was a high school teacher, and of course Butch is retired now and playing golf and doing the things a senior citizen should do at this time in his life. Mo McBride's the only one that passed away of this group. These 3 guys are all still living. Denny Sauer, he's still living. Walt Kramer, of course, and the principal, Mr. Forgy, and John Gross in that picture. Denny Sauer won a special award. He went on to play football at West Point, and he became an officer in the military and served during the Vietnam War. This is Denny Sauer here. John Gross was named the Coach of the Year that year. Here he is, proud to look at the football team that was given to him to represent the team and so forth, and all the trophies they won that year as that unscored upon football team. This is the 1959 jacket that was given to each player. This is Peggy Gerhardt's uniform. She was the feature majorette at the half times, of course, with the football team, or with the band. These are the guys that played golf together as team classmates and teammates at the time. Later on in their senior years, they played golf together and participated in a lot of breakfasts and so forth and reunions. So these are reunion photographs. There's Jimmy Heichel and Walt Carmichael, Lindsay Depew. These guys were all, they weren't so big in high school, but they're big now. So we could go on, and I can show you, zillions of photographs here of the players and the coaches. They got together at the different reunions. They had a 50th reunion and a 55th reunion, and each time, during those years, a lot of the guys were getting older and passing away, of course, as they got older from different illnesses and so forth. But there's a handful of guys left that still get together, and they sit around and talk about the good old days and enjoying their life the way they are today, doing these things as seniors. So we're going to move on to another project here. I think maybe if she can fade out here a little bit, we'll get another few photographs up here that we can present along with the different events that I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. This is an event that happened a few years back at the American Legion Post 751 on Shady Lane. We weren't really part of this, but we had an opportunity to buy one of the little memory blocks that they put in at the rebuilding and recreation of the World War II memorial on Shady Lane. The memorial over the years became very decrepit, and there were several members of the American Legion, along with some other folks in the community, that got together and decided that they wanted to have a big fundraiser to make this look a lot more presentable to the public. So they honored the World War II soldiers who went off to war by building this memorial and making it more presentable. Someplace where they can go every Memorial Day and celebrate the memory of the soldiers who were from Enola, East Pennsboro Township, that served during World War II. The names that are on this particular slide are the names of the men who gave the supreme sacrifice, who died during World War II. And the American Legion is actually named after Clifford D. Briner, who was killed during World War II. This is the original roll of honor that was actually wooden. This was at the Enola High School, or where the township building is now, across the street from where Route 944 meets South Enola Drive. During World War II, at the end, they had a huge parade of veterans who were in the parade, and you can see there's Navy guys in their Army, Air Force, and Marines and so forth who served from town here, and they were honored in the parade as they went down through town. They even had some military jeeps and a tank and everything back in the day going down through town. This was around 1946, of course, after the war. They had a huge Memorial Day celebration after that parade up in the cemetery, and you can see the soldiers and the nurses and so forth that were involved in World War II getting together to pay homage to the veterans who served in our country. Like today, we honor those who serve and who die from giving the supreme sacrifice to make our country today what it is. This is what the memorial looked like back in the day, in the 1940s, and this was right after they built that, honoring the World War II vets. This was another honor roll, wooden, I should say, presentation thing from the men in West Fairview that served during World War II. They don't have anything bigger than or like the Enola one at this time. I don't know if they ever will have anything like that. But they had their celebration too and their parade during that time. These are some West Fairview soldiers who were in that parade back in the day. Now, I have a whole, I should say, a large group of soldiers who served, pictures of soldiers who served during World War II. And I'm going to skip down through these and go to the new memorial. Shouldn't take me more than a few seconds. But we have probably 100 photographs of World War II veterans that served during that time. Now you can see here this is a large gathering at the memorial. There's Mr. DeMartin, who was on the Board of Commissioners in town here, giving a speech and depicting the new memorial the way it was given some new, what do you call it? They were made out of marble, so they got rid of all the old ones who were all cracked and busted up and so forth, and put brand new marble presenters of the names of the men who served during World War II. And this is the dedication day back in 2010. That's when this actually happened. And this is a picture that was taken by Denny Small and an evening photograph, making this look very beautiful. Now, what you can't see here is a great big floor area of blocks of the names of the people who bought blocks to help fundraise the rebuilding and dedication of the memorial to the township here.
I have a picture of that on my cell phone, actually, that I took last summer.
So that's that. That's all I really have on that. I'll try to get you the photographs, or a copy of the photographs of all the men who served during World War II from Enola. And then we're probably missing a few, of course. There were so many, but maybe you can use them and
Absolutely, that would be phenomenal.
honor each guy by putting them on one of your slideshows or movies. At this time, we're going to move on to 2009. Summerdale had a huge celebration of their 100th anniversary. Mr. Tom Coleman, who lives in California, was a Summerdale resident during his youth growing up, and he along with Sandy Hartzell, Rhodes, and some other folks who got together to have a large committee, and they had their chairpersons and committee persons and so forth. And what they did was they planned the whole year out so that they could have a celebration from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And there was a large parade when they had their big celebration in the middle of the summer. But what Tom Coleman really did here in creating this book, of course, he got a lot of old photographs from us, and he got a lot of old photographs from different folks in town that are still around, the families and so forth. And he went around with some of his committee persons and got a verbal history of their families as they were growing up in Summerdale. And he made that part of his book here, along with the photographs of the end of the year celebration. And I could, of course, will be able to give you a lot of these photographs and so forth too. And he really captured the history of Summerdale from 1909 all the way up through 2009. Just an awesome presentation of history here of Summerdale that we were part of with Tom Coleman. We were part of the parade. I'm going to be able to give you photographs of the different events that happened that year, along with the parade photographs, the end of the year celebration where they raised a wooden caboose on New Year's Eve and dropped it at the sound of 12:01, 2010. So
They will be really nice things to include when we do a presentation about our stories and different people from the area.
it's just a whole different event because of that little village down in Summerdale. One of the things you may not know about Summerdale from the early days was there was an actual huge dance hall in Summerdale. And Summerdale, when it was first established, wasn't really named. What had happened was there were a lot of little tiny buildings in Summerdale where people would come over from the city to take their respite or rest from the summer heat in the city. They would come over here and spend a week in their little cabins. It was not like a campground or anything like that, but there were like lots all over the Summerdale area. And in these lots, there were just little tiny houses where there were, they would actually be similar to what people call a tiny house today, that they sell for people to go on trips on wheels and so forth. But these were, of course, on the lot. And like I say, the people in Harrisburg would come over here and take rest from their jobs and so forth. And while they were over here, they would go to the dance hall because they had big bands down at the dance hall, and we got some pictures of the dance hall inside and outside, and you'll be able to show them as we are talking about the establishment of Summerdale. But eventually, the town was laid out, like Enola was laid out. An actual plot plan was set up, and the lots were sold, and of course the houses were built and the streets were established and so forth the way it is today. But that's the way it began, and this today, the way you look at it down at Summerdale is the way it is. And of course I'll be able to...
That would be very interesting.
give you a
I look
little-
forward to all that.
You can take time and browse through this and put your photographs to work with them.
Sure.
As we're winding down of what I have here that the Historical Society was involved with, we had a big event down in West Fairview. It was very similar to the one that was held in Summerdale. Of course, this was a 200-year event, and they were established in 1815, and of course in 2015 they had 200 years of celebration. But before we get there, we found some old photographs from 1915, and they actually had a 100-year celebration. Get this open for you. They had a 100-year celebration back in 1915.
Oh, how neat.
And of course we have the history of the town and so forth, and the time that they actually had this celebration. One of the biggest floats that you would call it on these like these wagons was suffrage movement. And that today is one of the things that everybody's talking about, women's suffrage, giving a woman the right to vote. And back at that time, it was a big deal because women weren't really allowed to go vote in a lot of places around our country. So they were celebrating their proudness of, hey, we want to go out to vote. And of course, today they are voting, and some people may not think that's a good idea, but I do. And I think it's one of the greatest things that ever happened in the history of the United States when they gave women the right to vote and the black people the right to vote from all their suffering that they dealt with as they were becoming citizens of our country over the years. So, a great piece of history, 100 years, we have a little bit of that. And then we're talking about well, there's the plot plan of West Fairview, the original plot plan. And the committee that was involved in our celebration was a group of people who thought, well, can we really work together or can't we work together? Because at this time, this wasn't too long after West Fairview had to give up its own operation with the building that we're in now as their township building, because they were a township separate from East Pennsboro Township. And what actually happened was they became broke as a township in West Fairview, and they really couldn't maintain the upkeep of the water system, the sewage, and the streets, and so forth. So they broke up that what do you call it, operation of businesses in town in West Fairview and consolidated with East Pennsboro Township, and it caused a lot of tension between the township in East Pennsboro and the little borough of West Fairview. And over the years, you know, it took a lot of time for the people to actually get along with each other because of the dissension, and they were not happy that they had to give up their little borough itself by name. They didn't change the name of the village, West Fairview, but they did change it as not the West Fairview borough anymore. So, along with that, these guys in West Fairview wanted to have a celebration. And of course, what happened was we have friends, Tom Crognally, who was on our board of directors here, got together with some of the ladies and gentlemen in West Fairview and formed a committee with Ruth Bender and Alice Beers. And they got together with me up here, that's me, and this is Deb Leupold, and Bertie Stewart was on that committee too. She's here. And we got together as a group, and we had to cross a few barriers between us because there was still a little bit of tension there. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to get along with these ladies and gentlemen in West Fairview to form a proper celebration, you know, getting committees together and having parades and so forth. And believe it or not, all that tension just dissolved because we sat down and talked common sense between us, and we got along like you would not believe. That barrier changed. That thing was like the renting of when Christ died, the renting of the veil, and that stuff's all over with. There is that tension's gone. Most of the older people in West Fairview are gone now, so there's not a lot of bickering and stuff anymore. And we got along great. Make a long story short, and we put together a celebration to be remembered for the years. And
So we could apply that lesson into our own world right now. Just finding your commonalities helped you to get rid of the dissension.
Absolutely. We have a political nightmare today, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
But we had a wonderful year of celebration. We had some parades. They had a great big picnic down in West Fairview that year, and of course the parade between the East Pennsboro High School band and the citizens of East Pennsboro got together and helped West Fairview celebrate, put together some floats and so forth, and they had a nice parade in West Fairview celebrating their big 215th anniversary. At the end of the year, they had a New Year's Eve event where they dropped a nail. I'm going to walk with her over here to the wall and show you the nail that they dropped in New Year's Eve to celebrate the end of their 250th celebration. Tom Crognale built this nail. It's a little hard to see back in the bell. This is an actual bell from West Fairview at one of the churches that doesn't exist anymore. So we can talk about that another time too. Mm-hmm. This nail, as strange as it may look, has a great big eye hook on it. And they had one of the township fire companies come down and hoist this nail up in the air. And at the striking of 12 o'clock at midnight, they dropped the nail and celebrated the end of their 200th anniversary in 2015. So we're here, Historical Society of East Pennsboro. We want to be part of the continued growth of East Pennsboro. There may be many celebrations down the years. They may not be big ones, like we had for the celebration of all the villages, the Enola, West Fairview, Summerdale. They may not be there anymore for many, many eons away from now, but we want to be part of the continued growth of our town and borough, I should say. And I'm becoming a windbag.
No, you know what, Jim? We are so looking forward to continuing and doing a whole series of videos for our library patrons from the Historical Society, and hopefully within the next, I want to say 6 months, but I'm thinking a year, when we start doing in-person programming again at the library.
Okay.
We'll be able to do a whole lot more, but we would love to continue this series with you and to continue to learn about the history.
Well, as you're having those events at your library, there may come a time when I can bring my projector up to have an in-person view of each different events that happened over the years. I can show you these presentations in a more fashionable way other than what we did today. And
that would be phenomenal.
I'd love to be part of that.
That would be great.
With the school.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.